Hi, people. Fourth show tonight. In fact, I have to be honest, we started a minute or two ago, and after a while, I noticed we are not online yet. So, Claire, welcome back again. I can't hear you. There's something.
Oh,
you can talk again. Okay.
I've got deja vu.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while.
I'm so glad you noticed now, though, and not half an hour in.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
Anne sent me a message. It was in Dutch, but the stream doesn't work. That's the fun part about being your wife is your biggest fan.
oh, that's great. I'm so glad that she noticed, though, because it could have been an hour in, having to do it. You'll have to listen to all me again. And I'm here next week. You're going to be bored of me by then.
But you can stay here as long as you want.
Great.
Online or on real, you can do it. Hi Inge, hi Benny, hi Anne, hi all the others. There was one big fan who says I'm gonna be online as well. We'll
hi,
see.
Anne.
Tonight we're gonna talk about two brands of you, Glencadam and Old Balantruan. We're doing another show next week. About the other distillery, I don't remember the name anymore. Maybe you can tell me.
You're drinking it.
I'm drinking
it. Think of people always used to say that there is a previous distillery manager called Tom, and I think he would take people around and say, "Think of me in a towel," and it was like Tom in towel. So that was the association of remembering how to pronounce it.
Okay, I see Dimi is online as well, so very important guy for you.
Hi.
No stress, Claire, no stress.
Okay. I'm fine. I have a whiskey to calm my nerves. I'm all good.
Okay.
Do you not think it's really weird doing these online tastings? But I can't believe that now we're doing them. I've never done them before. It seems so like simple.
Yeah,
it is.
It's different, and I do a lot of tastings with Skype or Teams, and even then it's different. You see people, but then you have to ask them, "Can you mute yourself?" Because everybody is hearing strange noises you don't want to hear.
Yeah, my flat is kind of like that. I live with one of my friends, and she's constantly putting like the dishwasher on or the tumble dryer on, and I'm like in the middle of a tasting thinking, oh my god. And this is why I wear headphones now permanently in case there's any weird You can imagine how popular I am taking over the living room and dining room for an evening every hour to do tastings.
But I asked you before, if you want, we can change the setup and we can do a meet Claire Tesh blind date tasting.
No, we discussed this.
Now.
It's not happening. Bring on the first contestant. Be like, no.
Maybe next week.
No.
5 minutes, and then afterwards we're gonna talk about guys.
5-minute whiskey chat, and then the rest is like, okay, fine.
Okay, it's okay. No, today we're gonna talk about whiskey, of course, and of course whiskey related stuff like being a brand ambassador, living on the road, living and doing your job in COVID-19 times. So you do a lot of tastings? Or you did a lot of tastings?
I've done a few. We did a lockdown festival. You're gonna have to. Yeah, did you see that one? It's difficult. You're gonna have to forgive me. Yeah. How sad you're for 5 hours. Just waiting, thinking like it's. And the thing is, because when you do these tastings, and there's a kind of system of one ambassador, then a next ambassador, you don't tend to see what everyone else says. So it's really nice for me just to sit and watch it myself and find out what everyone else is talking about their distilleries. Yeah. But it's the build up. So I was second from the end. So I was like, but it was such a good show. So we did that one. And then we've done a couple more tastings kind of in the weeks following that, I'm losing track of. I don't know about you, but I'm losing track of time. Yeah, we did. So we have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So we use all three platforms for both our distilleries. I haven't seen one
on Twitter, but how does it work?
So for Twitter, I mean, I'm not an expert in Twitter by any means. I actually don't use it that much. I don't quite understand it.
Me neither. So that's why I ask.
But it's actually quite good as a whiskey kind of community. I see that a lot of people that use Twitter for whiskey tend to have quite a lot of interaction. I think they get a broader reach as well. So we do videos. So it'll be every week we'll choose a couple of drams and we'll maybe do a few videos introducing them, some cocktail videos, and then it shows.
It's not live.
No, so I might be wrong, but I don't know if you can do Twitter live. Can you? But Facebook and Instagram are both live because it's a lot easier to have like the interaction like we have tonight, where people can just ask you questions. And we had a tasting with a whiskey club last night, a kind of meet and greet, where we were doing via Zoom, so you could ask questions and kind of get to know us as well. But it's a lot better when you can drink the drams that are in front of you. It's great to find out about distilleries, but for us at Angus Dundee, because Tomintoul and Glencadam are both quite under the radar distilleries, in that not that many people have heard of them or perhaps tried the full range. Nobody calling out there, have you? But no, it's kind of a combination of reasons, but we don't have a massive marketing budget at Angus Dundee. We've very much been about putting kind of the spirit first, and then everything else, packaging, etc., comes afterwards. So it's kind of perfectly understandable for people that haven't tried both of our brands. And I think that was the reason that I was brought on board, because I only joined them beginning of May last year for Spirits Bayside Festival. So it's coming up to a year now, and my job is to get to know our European markets and kind of bring them up to speed and kind of be a little bit more present.
For Glencadam, Angus Dundee isn't the owner for that long. I saw 2003.
Yeah. So we bought the distillery in 2003. Previous owners to that were a company called Allied Domecq. But actually, Glencadam had been mothballed from 2000 to 2003. I think Allied wanted to push their resources into their other blending distilleries. And so they kind of, because Glencadam is only 1.3 million litres, it's not a massive distillery by any means. And the capacity there, if you ever come to visit, we are looking at doing a visitor experience in the next kind of year and a half, depending on timelines. But if you want to come, or that is an open invitation to everybody, just send us an email or give me a message, and we do kind of tours by our distillery manager or assistant distillery manager on a Tuesday or Thursday. But when you kind of wander around the distillery, it's very compact. It's been around since 1825, so it's a very old distillery, but everything is kind of mismatched. It's all on different levels.
I don't know if you saw the previous show.
Who was it? Was it Shelton? Was the previous guest?
No, it was Patrick himself.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I feel bad for saying that.
Okay, you have one fan already. Mark says Gelncadam is very gentle and a good aperitif style whiskey.
Thanks, Mark. I would agree.
So
I think I should call you out. So Gunther's never actually tried many Glencadams in your life. We wanted to remedy that situation, but unfortunately, due to current circumstances, we haven't really had much of a chance, have we? But we will remedy.
It will be okay in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
I will make sure of it. And then I can say, I really like it.
I do, I swear.
Or something like this. I really like it.
I should have given you some like buzzwords to talk about, throughout it, so you could be like, "Oh yeah." The 10-year-old is always like that for me.
I'm talking about a completely different whiskey, so.
I wouldn't be the first, surely.
Don Dimi, and I think this is a reaction on Mark's, like the 15-year-old.
Yeah. So the core range for Glencadam is, actually I've got them here. It goes 10, 15, that would help if you could see. The 10 years old, 15 years old. We have the 18 years old, and then the 21 years old.
Maybe it can help you showing it.
Oh, that you just showed me up there. Yeah, okay. So you can see 10, 15, 18, 21. So the yellow, the black, the kind of light green, olive green, and then the kind of like deep red at the end. And that's our core range at Glencadam.
And
all bourbon matured.
And I see a 70-year-old. Is that?
Yeah. So then we have a few limited editions as well. So we have at the moment 3 limited editions. We have a 13 years old, a 17 years old finished in port. I say finished in port. We cut ourselves short a little bit by saying finished. And then the 19, which is again finished in Oloroso.
And
the 3 limited editions
still available?
Yes. So we do batches of the 17 and 19 and the 13. So the 13 years old is still available. This was actually brought out because about 2 years ago we got Ralphie talked about the 15 years old being the whiskey of the year. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, when he did that, it obviously took off, but we were running out of stock of the 15 years old anyway, because the distillery was mothballed from 2000 to 2003. So when he announced that it was whiskey of the year, it meant that our stocks just completely went, and we only had a limited amount. So we've just re-released the 15 years old towards the end of last year. So it's a new batch, but it's pretty much spot on to the old 15 years old. Maybe just for me, it's a little bit kind of more thicker in the mouthfeel, just by an inch, and a tiny little bit more malty, but not much. So the 13 years old was brought out as a replacement for the 15 years old while we get that back up and running. So the idea was we wanted to have something, because at Glencadam we do 2 different styles. So we do like light, crisp and fresh, which is the 10 years old and the 18 years old. And then we do a little bit thicker in the mouthfeel, which is the 15 years old and the 21 years old. Okay. So we wanted to bring out a younger style of whiskey that represented the thickness and the oiliness that you get from the 15, but at a younger age, so that we had enough stock. So cue in the 13 years old. So and this was brought in.
When you talk about limited, it's about 700 bottles or...
Slightly more than 700.
Okay.
We say limited edition, but it's for the world, global. So I suppose 700 bottles globally is a bit more than that. It's at 5,994 bottles. Okay,
that's more, but it's not that.
No, it's not like 40,000 bottles.
No, yeah.
It's somewhere in between 700 and 40,000 bottles. 5,000 bottles.
Is here as well. He told me he's a big fan of you.
He won't be when he listens back to what I've just said about the previous guests.
Have you seen the show with Chilton?
I did. I watched it when you sent it over. I watched it.
Okay, so you know the standard is not that high.
No, that's exactly what I took away from that, is that the standard was not that high at all. So I thought
you can do this.
Me just turning up surely will be much better than him.
True. Mark asks, Claire, have you had the chance yourself to try the Glencadam 1982 bourbon cask? Oh, okay. I think this is an invite. If you didn't try it, Mark, can I try?
Should I say no? Actually, I think I have tried the Glencadam 1978, but it was a while ago, and I've never tried the 1982 bourbon cask. I need to get that remedied immediately, because Glencadam works really well in bourbon, and for me, my palate's kind of adjusted in that so I just saw Shilton's message. But the bourbon, for me, my palate's kind of adjusted. So I used to drink a lot of heavily sherried, heavily peated whiskies. And I worked for an independent bottler before this, who released a lot of whiskies at cask strength. So for me, my palate was very much towards kind of cask strength, non-chill filter, natural color, that kind of style of whiskey. And then I've moved into a different kind of view of whiskies. So now I really enjoy just bourbon matured whiskies. There's something really comforting about it. I've always loved Glencadam. The 10 years old has always been a kind of standout for me. So it's been really nice to kind of move into just drinking bourbon. So I would love to try the bourbon cask whiskey if that is.
When you talk about bourbon, on peat is okay, or then you're not too keen?
Bourbon and peat together?
Yeah.
So I'm a massive peat fan as well. I love peated whiskey. Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I think there's something quite. I like the style in general. It's not really taken me like a long time to get into it. It's always just been something that I've enjoyed from the get-go. So I really love, we're kind of digressing a little bit, but I love like young Islas. I just think that, hi Gordy. I love young Islas. I think they're really like, especially styles like Kalila that are kind of a bit more rough and ready. So we do a brand called Old Balantruan, which is our heavily peated Speyside. So we use Speyside peat rather than Isla peat. So it's not as kind of like maritime-y.
You mean
salty.
These guys?
Yes. Cue the photo. I've just realized I've not plugged in my laptop either. So
I can see you. I can still see you.
Great.
Okay, you're taking off your shirt now. Okay.
I've forgotten about your sense of humor. It's only been a couple of months. Hold on. Right, there we go. I've plugged myself in, so perfect. So we have Old Balantruan, which is our heavily peated Speyside. So we have a non-age statement, a 10 years old and a 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And these are about 55 ppm of the malt specs that we order in. And then, and obviously that drops when you distill, and then it drops depending on how long you age for as well. So they go into refill casks. But they're lovely. They're really sweet because, not to talk too much about our sister distillery, but the style there is quite creamy and kind of fruity. So this works really well when you've got a peated spirit because it's very creamy and sweet, and you put it into refill casks and you get a lot of this kind of smoke, but it's balanced out with this kind of style of sweetness as well.
So actually this is a peated, dare I say it, Tomintoul?
Yeah. Peated Speyside. I think that's the tagline they were going for. But okay, we own two distilleries. So we have Glencadam and we have Tomintoul up in Speyside. So you can really guess at where that comes from.
One thing I really like about the brand is this picture.
Yeah, when you showed me that initially, I said, "What is that?" But then I realized it was the Old Balantruan. I've never seen it that zoomed in before. I've only ever seen it on the bottle.
I myself, I think it's one of the most beautiful things on a bottle.
Yeah, we have I've got the 10 years old here. This is probably my personal favorite, the 10 years. It's the kind of perfect balance.
You mean the design of the bottle, or what is?
No, the spirit. I mean, the bottle is
I was
nice
talking
too.
about the bottle.
Sorry, I'm just going. I told you, Angus Dundee. We always talk about the spirit. The packaging is second best to us. But the 10 years old for me is my favorite out of the non-age statement, the 10 and the 15.
Ooh, difficult question for Mark. Can you answer it now, or are you going to wait until next week?
No, I can answer it now. Mark might not tune in next week. He might have had enough. I don't want to lose him. So the PT Tang, so we do Tomintoul PT Tang as a brand as well. So we have the non-age statement, and the oldest that we've ever released has been a 16 years old, which was a Sweden exclusive for that. But the PT Tang tends to be a lot more in line with the Tomintoul style. So what I mean by that is it's quite gentle, quite creamy and sweet. It's bottled at 40%, so it's quite kind of almost like an introductory peat dram for people that are getting into drinking peated whiskey, rather than something like Old Balantruan, which is a little bit heavier on the palate and heavier in terms of more intense flavour. So the differences in the brands are ABV, different malt specs that we order in that the 55 ppm is Old Balantruan. So it's a lot more kind of heavy on the smoke rather than, and they get that kind of sweetness coming through as well, whilst the PT Tang is a lot softer. So it's very much in line with the Tomintoul brand.
And is that the reason for the different name, or?
So I think, they wanted to kind of separate the two. So Balantruan is named after our water source. So we have the Balantruan Spring, which is just across from the distillery. And I can see you, Gordy, asking questions. It's about 22, 23 ppm.
It's not on the bottle.
No, it's not.
Okay.
I can tell you that. I do know that. It's definitely not on the bottle. I don't know if many distilleries that do put the ppm on the bottle. I don't know if that's... I know that Ailsa Bay do. I just don't know if other people do. In terms of putting it.
There are some brands for doing it.
Mm-hmm. We don't tend to put it on because we'd have to kind of read it at the end, because obviously it's what we order in at 55 is the kind of specs. But the Balantruan is named after the water source. So the Balantruan spring is what supplies Tomintoul distillery. So it's just across the hill. So Tomintoul's in a kind of valley. And then just across from it, we have the Old Balantruan spring, which is where we named our brand afterwards. So I think the kind of same reasoning is to kind of separate the two. So peaty tang is more in style with Tomintoul because it's a lot softer and gentle. So it's called Tomintoul with a peaty tang. Whereas Old Balantruan is a kind of separate brand in that it's a bit heavier in that style.
They are available all year round, or?
Yeah, so we do about 5 weeks a year. We do a peated run at Tomintoul. Yeah, I didn't think so either, Gordy. Only because I think there's something to do with if you had to measure it at the end and it was wrong, then it would be a little bit difficult for you to kind of come back from putting it on the actual bottle. I think people get a lot kind of caught up when it comes to ppm as well, just because it's 55. Obviously, that is brought down when you have the final product. But it depends on, for me, it depends on the kind of spirit that they use. So for us, because it's creamy and sweet, and we use Speyside type of peat, it's a lot kind of softer, woodier, a lot earthier kind of. It's not as salty and maritimey. But it's a great dram, the Old Balantruan range. I love them. I use them in drinks and cocktails all the time, dare I say.
Okay, I like that. Which kind of cocktails?
We do, well, so I use it, I was going to say this morning, but it's not. It was this afternoon. I had a drink.
That would sound very, very strange.
I'm losing track of time and days now. I use it in my Bloody Marys or Bloody Josephs or whatever you want to say. Okay. So I do a little bit of a peated run. I also use like peated whiskey sours are pretty nice. Okay. Or peated boulevardier is pretty good. So, but we're just kind of experimenting. So I have a friend.
We do a lot of experimenting.
Yeah, we do. All alcohol based. Yeah. Yeah. So many people I told you are making banana bread, and there's me with my bitters thinking, right, okay, what can I do differently now? I'm not much of a cook, but I will mix drinks.
Okay, you do the cooking, I do the drinking. Yeah. So kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and who's in for the dishes afterwards?
Oh, it's where the dishwasher comes in like a treat.
Oh, you have a dishwasher. Okay, which is your favorite Glencadam whiskey?
Oh, that is such a difficult question because it just depends on my mood. So if someone was coming into Glencadam having never tried Glencadam before, then I would say start with the 10 years old, obviously, because it's the kind of best representation of our spirit. But also I would say, oh, Shilton. I would say it's, yeah, you're all over it. Definitely the 10 years old. It's probably the one that I drink the most of, the 10 years old. Okay. I think because it's quite like light, crisp, fresh. Like as someone said earlier, it's very like aperitif style. Our spirit is very clean and very tangy in the fruits. So it's kind of like pineapple juice a little bit. So when you drink the new make spirit, it kind of tastes a little bit like pineapple. It's got that kind of clear, kind of like acidity. Okay. I can never say that word properly. But my personal favorite is the 17 years old, which is this one here. So this is probably, I don't tend to drink that much portwood finished whiskies. Sometimes they can be a little bit bitter or like syrupy for me. Or
that's
like
the thing I like.
Yeah, that's the thing I don't like. I'm
not keen on sherry, and I do like my portwood finishes. So
yeah. So this is the first portwood finish that I enjoyed, and I think I like it for two reasons. One, because it's an absolute outstanding dram, but two, because it's kind of opened the gates for me in terms of drinking other portwood finishes. But this one, we stay portwood finish, and at Angus Dundee we don't tend to do things, we're kind of very traditional, so it's not technically finished. It's been aged for 12 years in bourbon, and then it's been finished for 5 years in ruby port. Okay. So when we say finished, we kind of undersell ourselves a little bit because it's quite a pricey dram, but it's so worth it. So we do this in batches as well. So we've released batch number 2 of this, and this one is one of 2,700 bottles.
Okay,
so slightly more limited. Yeah, okay. Exactly.
There's a question. Tomintoul 17-year-old sherry finish comparing with the Glencadam 9-year-old sherry.
Okay, so we did a Tomintoul 12 sherry, which was another limited edition for our range, and then we did a 4. Did you? Sorry.
I think she means the 70-year-old, the single cask.
Oh, the 17, the 2000. Okay, got you. So the 19 sherry is this one here. So it's different ABVs. So the Tomintoul 17 sherry was the PX release that we did, and that was at cask strength for a single cask. The 19 years old is 13 years in bourbon and 6 years in Oloroso sherry. Another limited edition, again, individually numbered, and this is at 46%. So the 19 years old is a little bit more kind of nutty. It's not as heavy as the Tomintoul, but the two spirit characters are slightly different. So Tomintoul is more creamy, bit more fruity, while as Glencadam is a little bit more tangy fruits. Like, as I said, think of like pineapples and that kind of thing. So when you put Glencadam straight into sherry, which we don't tend to do that often, but Tomintoul, when we put it into PX, it really comes alive. While as we put Glencadam first to kind of mellow it out a little bit in bourbon, and then we put it into 6 years in Oloroso sherry casks to kind of give it that kind of sherry oomph at the end.
And what kind of alcohol is this? 46 degrees?
The 19 years old is
the 19-year-old.
Yeah. So the Glencadam range tends to be, apart from single cask, we tend to do them at minimum of 46. So the only one that's not bottled at 46 is our Origin, Glencadam Origin, which is our non-age statement entry level into the range. That's bottled at 40. Yeah. But the 10 years old is 46%, which for me, for the 10 years old, is a dream, because there's days where I'll want the 10 years old and I just have it neat. And there's other days where it's just a little bit too prickly for me, because it is quite a spirit-forward dram. And just add a couple of drops of water to that really brings out the kind of more fruitier elements in it. But I always say the 10 years old reminds me of drinking like a white wine, because it's quite crisp and it's got a really dry finish to it that kind of crumbles away. But it's one of those finishes that you just want to keep drinking it again and again and again. So it's great. And it works very well on a highball as well. Don't know if that's a curse word or not.
Next week we're going to do a cocktail workshop.
Yes. That would be great fun.
Mark, it's a very good question, but I think we're going to answer this one next week.
Yeah, perfect.
Otherwise, we don't have anything to say next week.
More Glencadam questions, unfortunately. Yeah, but we can put that on the list for definitely speaking about next week.
Definitely write it down.
Sorry, Mark.
So, Mark, you will get an answer.
There's only so much material that I have, so we need to space out. You've got 2 hours of me.
Yeah, and she doesn't want to strip at the end, so we have to talk about whiskey. Apparently, Gordon finished Shilton's bottle. Oh, no, misread.
I think he said that, I can't see the previous comments, but does it say that he enjoyed the 17 years old?
It's this one.
Yeah. And then Shilton replied, yeah, I think that's an answer, long-winded. I think this is the last question, but in long-winded answer to your question, the 17 years old is definitely probably my favorite out of the range. But I do enjoy the 10. The 15's good. See, this is the problem. As soon as someone asks me what my favorite bottling is, I'll talk through the whole range by accident. So I'll be like, I like the 17. It's the one that I enjoy the most. But I drink the most of the 10-year-old. But I really love the 18 on like a summer's.
So the
21.
Actually, the 10-year-old in the morning, the 15-year-old at noon, and the 17-year-old in the evening. And just before you're going to bed, the 21-year-old?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. You could go breakfast, brunch, lunch, snack time, second snack time, dinner, bed. I think that covers pretty much the whole range. Not that you should be doing that during a day. That's not what I'm saying. Especially in these troubled times, do not be doing that. You could say, in fact, we'll change this. Monday, 10-year-old. Tuesday, 13-year-old. Wednesday, 15-year-old. Thursday, 17-year-old. Friday, go the 18-year-old. 19-year-old would be a Saturday. And then Sunday would be the 21-year-old.
Okay, and on Monday, we start all over again.
Monday, you start again, yeah.
Okay, and when do we try the Tomintoul's?
Well, what happens is we split them into afternoon and evening drams. So we'll split around.
Talking about the distillery.
Yeah, so it's I think you've got one of the only kind of, the distillery is not very kind of, I say picturesque, but I mean it as in it's quite difficult to get a decent picture of the distillery, and I've tried from quite a few different angles. But it's, for anyone that's not been, it's in Angus in Brecon, which is a small town, kind of the north. Well, I say north, kind of halfway up between Dundee and Aberdeen on the east coast of Scotland. And it's tucked away in this tiny little town called Brecon, which I'd never been to before I started at Angus Dundee, which is really bad, but I've driven past it quite a lot. But it's kind of tucked away. So when you kind of go to the distillery, you don't even know it's there. You go down one of the main streets and you turn in, and there's a football stadium and a graveyard. And then round that corner is the distillery. So you'd never even know it's there. It's insane. But it's really, as I said, compact. So it was built in 1824. Distilling started in 1825. But it's kind of, I always describe it as a kind of resilient distillery, in that there were a lot of other distilleries around it, like Northport, that kind of shut down over the time period. But Glencadam kind of consistently kept just producing spirits. So it closed for a few times. It closed during the wars. It actually had a pretty dangerous fire in 1914 that cost about £5,000 worth of damage. So part of my job at Angus Dundee is to kind of look into the history of Glencadam, which has been quite nice for me, being a history graduate. So I've done a little bit of research and looking at what's been going on. You're laughing at Chilton again. What?
History, and then you're going into spirits.
Yeah. So the reason I know it sounds, I actually did my dissertation on it's called the temperance movement, which is abstaining from alcohol. That's what I did my dissertation on. So any tips of how to stop drinking alcohol, I don't have them because it taught me nothing. But I did it on the history of the temperance movement. But I'd always been a bartender. So I moved into, I'd always worked in bars and cocktail bars. So then I moved from there to working for a startup distillery in Glasgow, making gin and whiskey and rum. And then from there, I worked for an independent bottler as a brand ambassador. And now I'm here. That's my timeline. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I think people always think that if you're a brand ambassador, you must have come from like a I don't know, a spirit kind of background. But for me, I was always just a bartender and loved spirits. So it made sense that I would eventually end up working in alcohol.
Okay, we have a long statement. The Glencadam 15-year-old was a stunner for years around the period of 2005. The last year, there is a whole new lineup with the different ages of Glencadam. Who gave the impulse to create a new lineup? Is the new 15-year-old comparable to the old one? You somehow answered that already before, but I think it's easier if you do it again.
Yeah, so as I said, the 15 years old, for those that didn't hear the last time, we ran out of stocks of this because the distillery is mothballed from 2000 to 2003. So fast forward 15 years, we didn't have enough stocks to supply. So we had about a 2-year gap. So the new release of the 15 years old, which came out the tail end of last year, is pretty much spot on to the previous 15. I mentioned earlier that for me, it's got a tiny little bit of like a thicker mouthfeel, a little bit more malty, but actually when you compare them side by side, the differences are so minuscule. And I've played quite meanly. I've played a couple of tricks on 2 of my friends that are massive Glencadam fans, and gave them the old 15 instead of the new 15, and said, what do you think the differences are? And they were like, oh, it's completely different to the old one, completely different mouthfeel. There's so much changed. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, guys. That was the old one. And I let them try the new one, and they're like, actually, it's pretty much spot on. So we tried to replicate as best possible the 15 previously.
Can you mention names? Just
no,
you will be angry.
No, I've already annoyed them enough.
It's an old distillery.
So 1825. So as I mentioned, quite a resilient distillery. We did some research into it. It's been kind of undergone like wars, as every distillery has, but if it's been that old, but it's undergone flooding, fires, mothballed. Other distilleries around there were kind of closing and shutting down, but Glencadam was always a blending component. So it's a kind of a top note in that it's very fruity. So adds a little bit of kind of, when we do a lot of blending ourselves, we have our creamy spirit from Tomintoul, and then we have this kind of sharp fruit, like tropical fruit note that you get from Glencadam. So it was in a brand called Stewart's Cream of the Barley. Don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Never heard about it.
So Glencadam was the kind of main component that went into that blend. But we bought the distillery in 2003. Robert Fleming, who's our master distiller and covers both distilleries, our distillery director, he was, when they spoke about buying the distillery just before 2003, he kind of said, look, Glencadam is never going to be the kind of the money maker. If they think this is going to be the millionaire brand, it's not got the capacity to do that. But it is an absolute diamond of a distillery. So it was more bought out of the love for the spirit rather than to kind of be the kind of powerhouse. Tomintoul, our other distillery, is like at least 3 times bigger than Glencadam. It's as I said, 1.3 million litres of alcohol every year. But it is all about the spirit. It always has been about the spirit for Glencadam. And I think that's kind of part of the reason that it works so well in bourbon. So the core range is bourbon matured, and kind of to give that kind of no frills, no other cask involved, just the spirit. And I think that's why I enjoy the 10 years old so much, is that the spirit really comes through on that one. You can, when you taste the new make and you taste the 10, the kind of influence of the cask is very apparent, but you still get a lot of the spirit character. And I think for us at both of our distilleries, we tend to do kind of traditional finishes. So we do Oloroso, we do port, but again, they're kind of 13 years and 6 years and 12 years and 5 years. But it's all about kind of showcasing the spirit of our distillery throughout everything that we do. So it should be about enhancing the flavors that are already in there, not about kind of creating new ones. But it's not to say that in the future we won't do slightly different finishes for both of our distilleries. I think you'll see Glencadam still being quite a traditional distillery. Tomintoul, our sister distillery, might be a little bit more kind of modern. We'll kind of probably do a lot more unique and different finishes with that kind of style of spirit.
And they both have a different master distiller, or is it the same person? So
we have one master distiller that kind of covers both, called Robert Fleming. So he's actually celebrating his 30th anniversary with Tomintoul this year, actually in about a week or something. He started at the end of April. I think he started on the 30th of April. Later. Yeah, exactly. That's what we've said. 30th of April. So he's 30 years, but he covers both of our distilleries. But we have Doug, who's our distillery manager at Glencadam, and has been for a long time now. So he knows Glencadam kind of better than anybody. So in capable hands, and he lives on site. So he has his little house just at the side there.
And one of the Dunwich warehouses. Oh.
Yeah, it literally right next to it. Like, that's his view. It's a great view.
Good place to live.
Yeah, it is. It is. I can think of worse places to definitely live than right on a distillery site. But when I was speaking to when I went up, I did a week working in each distillery right at the beginning, and we were talking about the history of Glencadam and what people know about it, and speaking to the people that live or have lived in the area of Brecon. So when we bought the distillery in 2003, we put up a fence, but before that, there was no fences that cornered off the distillery. So you could literally, there's a like a housing estate on the other side. So people would walk from the housing estate through the distillery to get to the pub, and then do that walk back after the pub had closed. And because you'd have the mashmen with the doors open, people would just wander in and say hello to their like friends that were working at the distillery, and then just walk on. So it's like, no, health and safety would have a heart attack with that. So yeah. So the first thing they did was put up a fence around the distillery just to kind of corner off But it's amazing because it's just, as I said, it's tucked away. You'd never actually know it's there unless you were looking for it. First time that I went up, I was so confused because you go right and it's just this tiny little lane. And I was expecting to see it. And Ian, who's our global ambassador, was driving in the car in front and I was in back. And he said that when I turned the corner and saw a distillery, my whole face just lit up because I wasn't expecting to see it. But it's such a cute little distillery. I hate to use the word cute, but that's the kind of only word that I can think of to use for it.
Cute is not a bad thing to say.
Cute is definitely not bad.
I see our time for this week is almost up.
Oh my God.
Yeah. By. About 40 minutes already. So if anybody has another question about Old Balantruan or Glencadam, you can shoot now, or if you want to ask something about Tomintoul, you can wait a week, or you can ask the question now, and she can.
Yeah, you can ask me Glencadam questions next week and Tomintoul questions this week. It's fine.
Cute is fine. There he is. No.
I'll see you next week, Mark.
I'm gonna wait for this one. He will reply on this. I'm sure he will.
I hope he doesn't, just to annoy you.
Okay, he doesn't.
Oh dear.
Just to make sure everybody sees this one.
Oh yeah, it's when I did coopering for a couple of days, and it's actually, I mean, it's so difficult. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it is actually. It took me, I think it was like 5.5 hours to replace 3 of the staves for that cask. And I don't have any children, but I didn't want to give the cask back. I wanted to keep it forever because I was so attached to it. But it was meant to, I think it's meant to take them like 50 minutes or 45 minutes to do that. And it took me 5.5 hours. It was so difficult, but so much fun. I don't know if I could do it for a week straight, but it was so much fun for the couple of days that I did it.
I got one more question for you. It's the most important question of the evening.
Oh God.
You can show
what is that?
Haven't you seen
I've
the
never seen it. No.
Okay. Chilton will send it to you. There are 2 dance moves. Actually, there are 3 or 4 now. Most of them are.
Is it so more of a? You mean it's more of a routine now than a dance move? You've got a full routine, do you?
I don't have a routine.
Oh God. Okay, I'll learn it and I'll do it next week. I promise.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is.
It's okay.
Hold on. I've just realised who I'm talking to before I agree to things.
No, it's
you Chilton. And Chilton then.
All about Chilton.
Okay. Oh wait, is it the Okay, I can practice. Is it the that one? No. I've just reminded myself of my gran.
We'll see.
Oh God. Okay, I'll see it and I'll do it next week.
Really happy to have you here. And
thanks for having me.
We'll meet again next week.
Mm-hmm,
do you know who's coming next Wednesday?
No.
It's one of the handsomest guy in the industry, I think.
Oh, it's Chris. Okay.
My wife always says he's so handsome and sweet.
He's such a nice guy. Chris is the best.
Afterwards, we meet again with you.
Yep.
And then we have, he's here, Mark himself, talking about whiskey. Bert Bruneel from Aston Morris.
Nice.
And then we have Paul Ashton from Deerstalker. Then we do a rum tasting. I talk Flora Boucher from Compagnie des Andes. Really good rum. And then we meet again with Patrick Prot and Bert Dekkers from Beacon Spirits and Liquid Art. And then there will be some others, but I'm making appointments already. So I see you next week.
Yeah, I'll see you in exactly 1 week to do these dance moves.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Bye, everyone. Nice to see you, everyone. Bye. Keep safe.
Thank you very much, all. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you have questions about Tomintoul, you can share them already. I hope to see you next Wednesday with Dealing Distillery, Chris Hayes. We will talking about Irish whiskey and Irish history. And of course, we will be tasting a few whiskeys. Like most of you know, Teeling is one of my favorite distilleries, so I'm really happy to invite that he is coming over. So I hope to see you Wednesday, and otherwise I see you next Saturday. Good evening, goodbye, adieu, so long.